Alright, for this month's Ritwit, I decided to enlist the help of my niece and nephew to do the theme song with me. So let's get this thing rocking, shall we? The Ritwit!
The Ritwit!
The Ritwit! The Ritwit Podcast! Ba-da-ba-da-bum. Thanks for the help, guys.
You're welcome, Uncle Mac! You're welcome, Uncle Mac!
I'll take that as a you're welcome. Okay, I'll be sure to thank you guys in my Grammy acceptance speech. Well, now that that's over, we at the Ritwit have an announcement. David and I here have totally sold out, and we're going to start doing these ads now for our favorite products that we either made or have been paid some handsome money to advertise. This episode of the Ritwit is brought to you by Ritwit Ink, our specially made ink solution. Tell us about it, David.
Are you running out of printer cartridges?
All the time.
Perhaps you like the old-fashioned method of writing with a quill on parchment. Maybe you've only upgraded to the more modern cousins with paper and pen. But here's what all of these resources need. Ink. Deep in the largest freshwater lakes among the Rocky Mountain region, we find the best product for our Ritwit ink. If you'd like to try a sample, it's only $7.99 a bottle plus tax and insurance fees. Why insurance fees? Because we help you start making your own supply. We provide you with specially bottled Rocky Mountain water and a live squid to scare into making its product.
My goodness, a live squid?
Yes! As a one-time only benefit, buy in the next 15 minutes and we'll even provide you a step-by-step mixing guide for your very own Ritwit ink at no extra charge. Here's the secret. It's only 1 part water to 3 parts squid product.
Ooh, I like it. And that also means that if you mess up and the squid gets accidentally electrocuted by computer wires or something, you get some free calamari as consolation.
Indeed. Try your Ritwit ink today. Guaranteed to make your writing look bolder and better. Beyond printer cartridges is our favorite ink. The 2 twits of the Ritwit are not responsible for any spillage, defective mixtures, bodily injuries, or severe harm or poison injections incurred by handling angry squids. Please consult a doctor immediately if you get bitten, unless severe neurotoxin is involved, in which case consult a mortician and loved ones for any last-minute family issues or conversations, and perhaps a lawyer to discuss your region's life insurance policies. Please use responsibly. Approach live squids at your own risk.
Good job on that. That must have been a handful to say. Oh, by the way, where can people contact us for that? Oh, here we go. It'll be 1-800-555-RITWIT. There we go. That's a classic answer. I figured if they're going to get this stuff in the next 15 minutes, they better have some way to contact us.
That is true.
And not just the email that we have at the end of every podcast.
Try our toll-free number, 1-800-999-8564.
That's probably someone's real number. You always have to use 555, remember, because that's the only
Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of the Ritwit.
Okay, fine. Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of the Ritwit, the show where a part-time barista and a working abroad music major have delusions of writing grandeur.
But we're still better than you.
Indeed. Alright, I'm Matt Donald.
And I'm Matt David.
And that was our new attempt to be funny, I guess.
It was an advertisement for our legitimate Ritwit ink product. I tell you what, man, you should see the stings that I've gotten from these angry squids. I'm not kidding you. If you get stung, talk to a doctor. Anyway.
So how big are these squids? I haven't seen one of them. Are they like little, or are they like krakens?
Well, krakens, we'd have major liability problems. So, they're just, smaller.
So like a foot long, yeah. Like
yeah, we kind of focus on getting them from as close to the source of the water as we can, because that way you don't have to spread your search too far to find the material.
So are these Rocky Mountain water squid? Because
well, I don't know if they're in Rocky
Are there
Mountain
freshwater
waters.
squid? I guess there are now. Okay.
Well, I guess we're making Ritwit ink, so I guess we're making freshwater squids happen too. I don't know.
Oh yeah, we have a genetics lab somewhere in the
deep in the Rocky
somewhere.
Mountains. Yeah, no. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. Now that we're done with that, we've already wasted enough time. What are we going to rip off this month?
Well, I've been rereading the seminal series, The Chronicles of Narnia, and one of the books that I've read, of course, was had a very interesting storytelling tactic that I would like to rip off in some story of mine in the near future, and that is this.
Okay.
The Horse and His Boy, with third book chronologically in the series, if you want to think about that. It involves 2 human travelers coming from the south or southern parts of the world to Narnia, which is in the north, and there's this
Narnia is just the northern part of the fantasy world. I didn't know that. I need to read these books.
You've never read the books of... Never mind. Anyway.
I'm a writer. I'm a professional author.
Well, you're a part-time barista and a published author.
And I'm an English major.
Anyway, so these two characters are coming towards Narnia, which is more in the north than they are, and they have this major adventure where they get separated, and it essentially puts them in their more use quotes here natural environment to get two halves of an essential story. So the boy is actually from the north. You find that out.
Okay.
Sorry, potential spoilers, but I won't tell you what
for a
he is
50-year-old book.
Yeah, but what he is from the north, I won't tell you. Okay. Anyway, he's from the north, and he ended up in the south, and so he's going back home. Well, let's just say that he fell in with people who happened to be from the north, except he was being loyal to his group, and so he left them to be back with his group again. Okay. Meanwhile, the girl was from that southern country. She was actually...
Is the girl the horse?
Say leading... No.
I wasn't sure if the horse was...
and two horses.
Oh, I thought you meant these two characters were the horse and his boy.
No.
Aw. Well, it's Narnia. The horses can talk.
Yes, but not in that country.
Oh.
Anyway.
That's confusing.
No, well, if you read the books, you'd understand. But
yeah, well.
The point being that they put this girl, who is basically like gentry in the country she's from, they put her in a situation that allows you to see the other part of this story that both of them need to know, and eventually when they come back together, she brings her piece, he brings his piece, and boom, the puzzle fits together. And I really like that storytelling tactic, because it means that you don't have to, heaven forbid, change focus characters that we're not already caring about, and it definitely saves time, you know.
Oh, that makes sense.
If you can use it well. Which I really appreciated in that.
Well, I do like flipping back and forth between perspectives, as you probably know from my writing, but...
Well, and I do too in certain places, but...
I don't know. I guess it makes sense that the horse wouldn't be the girl, because the horse and his boy. If the horse was a girl, it'd be the horse and her boy.
There are two horses.
What? Okay.
There are two horses. The title horse and the boy. But then the other character, the one I mentioned, is a separate girl who also has a horse that is also from Narnia.
I don't know. Anyways, well, that sounds interesting. Anything else we're gonna rip off, or it doesn't look like it here. You've been pretty busy lately, so
yeah. We mentioned somewhere around episode, was it 3, continuing and all that stuff. You have to make it a priority. And I really love writing, I really enjoy it. But it definitely takes a lot of mental capital after I come home exhausted from a day of work. Right. So I haven't done it much lately.
Well, that's fine. That's how a lot of people are, so it's nothing to be ashamed of.
You'll hear more about that when we talk about what we, the Writ, have writ.
All right, cool. All right, anyway, so what I'm going to rip off from this month, I recently rewatched with a friend of ours who I think we've talked about on our podcast. He's one of the guys who we're going to collaborate with. We have been collaborating with in our podcast. Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas. It's it's DreamWorks Animation's last 2D animated movies, their last hand-drawn cartoon. I've always been a really big fan of this one, and I really like it still. Like, it's super creative. It's got a lot of cool creatures that Sinbad fights, and they're a really cool design. Like, there's this giant bird called the Roc, but it's like white like an owl, and it can crawl like a bat. So that's kind of cool. And there's
interesting mix of features there.
Well, they do like to mix them all up. Like this squid called the cetus, right? That attacks, which is the Greek kraken. And actually, in the original story of that Clash of Titans is based off of, Perseus used the Medusa head to turn the cetus into stone. However, I understand why they changed it to a kraken, because release the cetus does not sound quite as epic, right? So,
well, cetus, doesn't that? I mean, you would know, Mr. Wildlife of Tomorrow, but cetus,
it means whale.
Whale.
It means whale, yes.
I mean, it is impressive in its own way, but I guess a kraken, you can use the tentacles more...
Well, the cetus also has tentacles, so...
What?
So, yeah, but this one, it has, tentacles, and then it has, a chameleon tongue that snatches some poor sailors with. It has, crab-like legs, and has fish fins. It's really cool. I also like just the fact that it's a fantasy road trip. I love those kind of things. I love road trip adventure stuff. I'd love to write a fantasy or sci-fi road trip sort of thing, where you just go from exotic locations and a series of them in adventures and stuff, trying to get to the end. I think it'd be kind of fun to write.
I'm just trying to wonder, maybe you did the little bit of that in the previous version of Megazoic.
Oh, a little bit. Oh, I did that.
When they went to Rhea and all that. That wasn't really...
Well, yeah. Back then, yeah. Oh, that was great. So speaking of Wild of Tomorrow, I did do it. That was kind of... The first one especially was definitely a road trip sort of thing. So I'm like... Okay, let me say. I'd like to write another road trip. So,
hey, the collaboration universe would be a great place to... Anyway, joke.
Maybe we should do an episode where we talk about all of our projects that we had written in the past. We keep referencing and none of our listeners have any idea what they are. Like... I think we mentioned Wild for Tomorrow like 4 or 5 times, and I still don't think we ever explained what the hell it is.
Well, I believe we had a very good friend of the podcast who did a pre-review of our pilot and said, give elevator pitches. And I think we did give elevator pitches for a lot of the stuff. I don't know if all of them have received that treatment.
Maybe we should do an episode that talk about our embarrassing old stories, just to say you can get better. We were better than you, but at one point we were worse than you are now. So, anyways, I also I didn't see this, but I've seen other reviews of it, and I don't mind spoilers, so I know exactly how it ends. I heard about the new Mummy movie with Tom Cruise. And it sounds like it's pretty terrible. I mean, I know form your own opinions and such, but like everything I've heard about sounds pretty bad. The best part about it apparently seems to be the guy from one of my previously favorite shows, New Girl, and Jurassic World. He's in it. He's like the sidekick to him, and he's always very charming. That sounds good, but like other than that, it's like a mishmash of stuff. It tries to be like scary and funny and action like all at once, and it doesn't really do any of them well. Like, you can have all 3 of those, but just do them well. Like, I don't know.
I'd say it's probably better to pick one and specialize in it.
The Mummy movies back in the day, the ones with Brendan Fraser, the first one was more horror, right? But it also had a lot of humor. But the way it did it, I think, was well. Like, it didn't mesh it all on at once. It just started off as like a rollicking adventure with humor, but then once The Mummy was released, it became more of a horror. It had a natural point where it tipped. So, but this seems to kind of have it all spread apart. But like mishmashed together. But also, here's one thing I'll give it props for. This isn't really what I'll rip off, I guess, but rip off. Do your bloody research, guys, is what I say. So they actually use the correct god of evil. The Mummy gets her powers from Set. A lot of people think that Anubis is the god of evil in Egyptian mythology, but no, he's not. He's the guy who prepares you for the afterlife. He's the ancient Egyptian equivalent of Saint Peter.
He basically weighs whether you're worthy or not.
Right.
I think there actually is the symbol of a scale. But no, Set is the major, like...
Right. And I think that the Mummy Returns, the second Mummy movie with Brendan Fraser, that did use Anubis as the god of evil. So that's one improvement. They used the correct god, but what can you do? It's not doing too well. Apparently it opens with the Dark Universe logo, because they're trying to set up their own shared cinematic universe with this. Well, good luck, I say. This is a great start.
Good riddance.
It's crashing and burning.
We have too many of those collective universes things.
Well, Marvel did it, and everyone's like, oh, it can't be done. Then Marvel did it, made lots of money, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, we gotta do it. That's always how it works. Follow the money. Apparently Wonder Woman is doing really well, so maybe DC's back on track. I'm going to see that tomorrow with a friend of mine. So I'll let you know next month if that's any good, and if I'm going to rip anything off from it.
Very true, very true.
All right.
Are we ready to move on to the next?
Yep, what we at the Writ Wit have writ. So what have you writ, David?
Well, I mentioned a couple episodes ago my idea that I'm calling Pulsar, and I'm still plugging away at that. Mm-hmm. I've got bits of 2 episodes going, and I have added some to the opening episode. I've not yet completed it, but eventually it will happen. And by eventually, I mean if it isn't done by July, and I don't tell you, I got it done at that time, people can, throw internet stones and the equivalent of that at me, because
send us emails and be like, get it done, damn it, or I'm not going to listen to you guys anymore, because we have so many listeners, it'd be a shame to lose all of them.
Yeah, we don't want to.
Actually,
whatever motivation.
There's no reason to exaggerate. Actually, we have very few listeners. We have so few listeners.
We don't want to lose any.
It's precious.
Well, other than your mother, who's always been there for us. But anyway, I have also been workshopping one of my other projects with a co-author. I told you about Starburst before,
right.
Giving you the elevator pitch for that. And so we've done... It's been in the other co-author's hands of late, and so I've been workshopping with him on it, because I have more experience writing creative stuff than he does, and so we've been trying to, come together and...
Right.
unify the tone and all that. So I have been doing that kind of stuff as well.
Okay.
You know, as I mentioned, it's not easy to write if you don't make it important to do it every day, and I just have not been doing that lately. So there really isn't much, product to come from being, well, for lack of a better term, lazy.
Right.
However, I do randomly come up with, like, lyrics for just random, like, poems and songs. And
most of them are pretty depressing, I hear.
Well, some of them are, but, sometimes I just
By
get
the way,
struck with this brilliant idea, and it works pretty well.
Right. By the way, just in case the listeners don't hear it, what's that tapping on your end?
The tapping on my end...
I just keep hearing, like, a weird... Pew, pew.
Don't worry too much about that, listeners. If you can hear it, they're doing construction, like, pretty much right outside my window. It's really annoying!
Yeah, it does sound like noise. So I just thought we'd mention it just so in case... If we don't, then people hear it. They're like, "What is that?" Like, well, at least we acknowledge that it's there. Anyways,
yeah, it is there. Well, enough about my stuff. What have you at the writ recently?
I think that works. I don't know. That title was the worst mistake we've ever made.
I love the thing though. If you change it, it becomes really complicated. But
no, but I also kind of like that it's bad. It's fun to stumble.
All right.
Anyways.
What have you done?
All right, so I have written the Kavorian Prequel. This is the prequel for our collaboration that's about my first solo outing as a character and what makes me a hero. Now, one of the things I struggled with before writing this was like, because this is a technological civilization, this is a technological character. How do I make this different from Megazoic, right?
Sure.
Like, how do I make the world different? How do I make the main character different? Well, one of the things that's different about Kavorian as opposed to Cortan, which, if you want to know more about Cortan, buy my book at Amazon.com. Just search
Cheap
Megazoic.
plug.
Wink. Anyways, so
add the ticker sound effect. Tink.
I might need to just put a sound effect to just insert it there. Ding. All right, nice. Alright, so, first off, Kavorian is a soldier, first and foremost. He's an atypical soldier, but he very much likes to get in the thick of it, and he likes to help, and he's good with that. Also, the technology of the world is not nearly as human-y. Like, I kind of envision, especially for the dinosaurs, right? Like, their technology, except for the terrain technology, their tech is supposed to be, like, for humans, what humans might have in the 22nd century, 23rd century. So, like, advanced, but nothing too outrageous. Like, they still have guns, they still have bullets, they still use metal, they still, like, use all this stuff. They don't have anything super crazy, like lasers and portals. Now, there is a portal in Megazoic, but it's created by Tyranian tech, so... But this, with the Kavorian Prequel, I go much further out. Like, it's like, I use the word Krypton-esque to describe it here, like Superman's home planet, right? So, that's like, in terms of structures, it's like... It's very beautifully designed. There's a lot of clothy stuff, like banners and capes, just sort of to make it look like a futuristic Rome, right? Or like something like that. Just make it look more grandiose. But they also have, I don't say they have guns, I call them blasters. So like the whole like pulpy sci-fi way. They have like warping and teleportation.
Traditional space opera stuff.
Yeah, it's much more space opera-esque. So that's the main difference. Oh yeah, the fact they go into space at all is different. I've avoided that thus far in Megazoic. Also...
Quick non-spoiler alert. Will you do that later in your story?
Quick non-spoiler answer, middle finger. No, I'm just kidding. Quick non... Alright, well, that's a question that's... You really got me in a corner here, Matt, because I feel like if I say nothing, then people are like, oh my gosh, he's going to space. Or if I say one way or the other, then I'm just doing a spoiler. So, I'm going to say...
Here's your non-spoiler answer.
My non-spoiler answer is the next book is totally going to be a space opera expanding multiple galaxies. Am I lying? Who knows? Let's move on.
I was going to say the non-spoiler answer is, well, in that universe, there may be things that go into space. Is it this character? Keep reading to find out.
Keep reading to find out. Anyways. So... Alright, so... You made me lose my train of thought, David. Okay. Okay.
So you're talking about space opera and
how okay,
space is
so
different.
I'm also reusing elements from an older stories of mine, one of which was from an older version of Megazoic, right? Where it was much more space opera-y, and there was this alien race called the Zlur that were the bad guys. Zlur. X-L-U-R. I couldn't even spell my own fantasy word. It's 4 letters, but it's 4 confusing letters.
You know, I'm gonna take a quick time out on what you're talking about here. I just find it amazing that you love choosing letters that are so rarely used for your villains. Like, you have the Zlur, that starts with an X. Then we had the Zellum, that was a Z. And then the Quaison, which was a Q.
I'm much better about it now than I used to be. The Tyrannians, King Dranex. I mean, I guess it ends in an X, but I don't know.
Alright, sorry, go back.
The Zlur also, it's not only a Z sound,
it's
a Z sound, but it also has an L right afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, and the things that we did with that. You should... Well, I don't know if they'll ever read the old Megazord, because I don't think it'll see the light of day.
I might do segments on it. I might post segments of it.
In that future episode where we explain all of our stuff, we should totally make that a thing.
I think we should, but
no, I think there should be like a segment on spelling your villain.
How many points does it score in a Scrabble turn? If it's a lot, then you're good.
Well, I was specifically thinking about that one character and how his quote-unquote race changes so many times.
Right.
Like the portmanteaus that you did.
Oh, right. I remember now. Zocker, Uzok. Okay, I was going to say, one of the villains was named Xeno, spelled X-Z-E-N-O. I was like, oh,
Why?
Xeno, like xenophobic.
Why, listeners?
Or
no
Xeno,
idea.
like Z-E-N-O. Why not mix them both?
And the point of this, all listeners, is that he could never make up his mind.
But I eventually did. I eventually wrote a new one, and it's published now. So I have no reason to write another version, except that I do, and I'm working on it right now, and that's what the sequel that's going to be all space opera is going to be about. Am I lying? Who knows?
That's another version of Megazoic now?
Yep, I am. It's,
I'm sorry.
This is derailed very quickly. Just basically, this is an old idea for this race called the Zlur, and I'm using it in the Kavorian Prequel. You can use... I'm fine recycling old ideas from stories that I'm not doing anything with. As long as, like, it's an idea I'm not doing anything with. Like, if it's like...
Yeah, I mean, if you're not touching them again, then why not?
Like, if I write a completely different series in the future, and then I just suddenly throw in a Tyrannian in there, people might be like, what the hell? Like,
right. I mean, if you're not doing anything with it, it should be fair game. It's an idea you had somewhere else, and if it's good, why not reuse it?
Right. I think so. And so, yeah, these are, like, I didn't think this fit, like, in the old version. Like, in the old version, there's a lot of different... It wasn't just the dinosaurs. There's a bunch of different other races. And it was a fantasy universe sort of thing. It allowed a lot of creativity. I've talked about this before. But it also... It ended up ruining what I wanted to do in the first place, which was make a dinosaur. It became a sci-fi fantasy story that happened to have dinosaurs, rather than a dinosaur story that happened to be sci-fi, which is what the new version I'm trying to do is. So... But, so a lot of them races I've taken over from other things, because they don't need dinosaurs. One of them is the Zlur. They're like these robot scorpions. So, I think I've talked about them before in another podcast.
I believe you mentioned them before, too.
Anyways, I'm using them in this Kavorian prequel. And speaking of Megazoic, this brand new version I'm doing, which is a brand new version and a brand new continuity, it's also a sequel. Wait, that joke fell flat in his face. Well, you know, okay, I'm like Michael Jordan. The reason why I make so many good jokes is because I also miss so many good jokes. Just keep shooting them out.
Something about the ceiling is the roof? Something that Michael Jordan actually said?
Yeah. Something about how he was like... the reason why he kept making the most shots in NBA history is because he missed the most shots in NBA history. And that's the same with my jokes.
Okay, we'll quibble on sports trivia facts on a different podcast. But anyway.
Alright, so I'm working on the sequel to Megazoic. I think I'm going to reveal the name of it once I finish it. I'm more than halfway done at this point, so that's it's pretty exciting stuff there. Not really much else to talk about, though, except that last episode I mentioned that my illustrator is... I mentioned her name, I didn't know how to spell it. I can confirm, I spelled it.
You didn't know?
Pronounced it. It's not spelled, pronounce.
I was about to say, what is this about spelling? You can't see that.
Yeah, I spelled her name in perfect... Well, I pronounced it correctly. It's Natasha.
Congratulations! Here is your golf clap.
Oh, thank you very much. I definitely earned this. It's nice to have someone clapping to me. You realize how much I miss that? Everyone hates me. It's nice to get those little moments of appreciation to be like, "Hey, Matt, good job."
Well, and something else to throw out, too. I mean, you obviously published Megazoic because we talked about that last time, but at this point, you don't really see much of the people who are reading your book, right?
I know, at this point, there's people reading it that I don't know of. Although, again, I still haven't gotten a negative response. I haven't even gotten oh, it's fine. Everyone who has read it has really loved it. Like, one of my coworkers, her kids are going nuts over it. Like, it's overwhelming, honestly. And I'm really scared about that negative review, because it's going to happen. The first negative review. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. But at the same time, that also kind of encourages me that right now the problem isn't whether or not people will like it, but how do I get for people to know that it exists? So,
yeah, absolutely. Which is definitely not a thing to talk about in what we at the Rit have wit.
And we've wasted so much time already, so let's talk about our segment.
You didn't mention anything about how I screwed it up. Thank you.
what we at the Rit have writ, and what
it's
we
over.
at the Rit Wit have wasted time. I don't know.
Well, we always, us two twits always waste time. But anyway,
even though we're better than you,
we are better than you. We hold on to that like it's a treasure.
All right, anyway, the real antagonist of this show is filler, isn't it?
I would suppose so. I was wondering who was going to do the segue, but all of these...
Okay, what was your segue? I'll let you do your segue.
Thank you for being so kind. I was going to say, but we write stories here, right? And we talked so much about these characters we like following, and those are obviously the people we should care about, right?
Right.
But that's only half of the story. The other half, a very important part of the tale, is the people that are against them. The antagonist.
Right, and sometimes it's not even a character, but we'll get to that, so...
Well, I was about to say, why don't we explain a little bit here about different kinds of antagonists?
Right, well...
Which is our actual topic.
Right. Our topic for this week, this month... Why is that so difficult for me?
I don't even want it to be weak.
I don't, though. This is so much work. Alright, anyways. So, this month... our topic is types of antagonists. Now, antagonist is such a broad topic, it needs to be split into multiple episodes, and like this, we're not really talking about here about what makes a good villain, or how
to write them well.
Yeah. So I'm like, this is more just like how to categorize them, so you can figure out for your kind of story that you're writing what would work best. So there's many different ways for a character to provide conflict for another character, like the.
Speaking. And this, just a quick interruption to think about. Different multiple ways to skin a cat. Speaking of a very famous antagonist, how about multiple ways to skin a dog? Particularly one that's dotted.
Oh, right. I see what you're talking about. At first I was like, what the hell kind of horror show you're talking about? Oh, and then you're talking about a Disney movie. Okay.
I'm glad you caught on.
There's going to be a prequel with Emma Stone as a young Cruella de Vil, and I'm like, you could just not make that Disney, right?
That would be perfectly fine.
We don't need to see Cruella de Vil origins.
Don't ruin Emma Stone for me, Disney, please. Anyway.
It'd be damn difficult for us to ruin Emma Stone. Even when...
Okay, I haven't seen that film, dang it.
I'll just edit that out. Or not. Let's see.
Or not. Who knows?
Alright, types of antagonists. Alright, so first one we've got here. I usually, you read your silly list, but I'm going to read my silly list now. So feel free to interject with comments as you will. So,
sure.
Alright, what I'm starting off with here is characters who are evil, like evil incarnates, but mainly their relationship to the protagonist. So first off, I got an evil overlord, who has no personal connection to the protagonist. Their only goal is take over the world. This is really common in high fantasy and sci-fi. These are like characters like Sauron, or the White Witch in Narnia that I haven't read. At least I think that's what she is. Who knows? I haven't read it.
I would argue that she doesn't have a personal connection to the protagonists.
But she definitely has a personal connection to Aslan, so...
Right, but Aslan is not the protagonist of that book.
Right, so it's more like the god versus the devil, quite literally, actually. So,
well, if you look at the symbolism, it is. But anyway, moving on.
All right, but then like Palpatine in Star Wars, Darth Vader does not count because he has a fatherly relationship with Luke. He probably counts the first one, I guess. The one before he found the first Star Wars.
The one before he admits, "I am your father."
Right, but Grand Moff Tarkin in that one definitely probably counts too. He doesn't care about anyone. He doesn't. Who's this Luke fellow? I don't care.
This is perhaps not like types of protagonists, types of antagonists question, but how many antagonists are you talking about? Does it have to be just one or not? I'm assuming the answer is no, but...
Just like the central antagonist, because of course a lot of stories, particularly like high fantasy and such, they have multiple bad guys. I'm really bad about this personally. I always like to have one bad guy. These are the kind of characters, like, they don't really care about the protagonist. They're just there to conquer the world. And the protagonist only stops them because he's the hero, right? The heroes stop the bad guys from taking over the world. So...
Curious, you do a lot of frequenting on the site TV tropes, and you talked about different, like, villain cliches and stuff, and one of the ones that the title sticks with me is that you talk about the complete monster.
Right.
And I'm curious, this evil overlord-y type person, is that where you find the complete monsters in the world?
They can also be the next category, because at that point, the complete monster doesn't really matter if they're world dominating or just really, really bad guys. So... complete monster is more just their attitude in general, not just their plan, so...
Okay.
So, speaking of the next one, we got Evil Assaulter is what I call it, in quotes. It's basically, this is a character who, sometimes he has concern with the world. I talk about how sometimes the Evil Lord can evolve into this, but, like, a lot of times they're just mainly focused on personally on the protagonist. These are, like, common, like, slasher sort of films, or like revenge films and stories, I guess, not just films. There's more to life than movies.
Depending on whether you think Freddy or Jason is the protagonist.
Right. One of them is the evil... No, they're both evil assaulters, I guess.
Right, well that's what I'm saying. Like Freddy Krueger in Nightmare on Elm Street series, and of course like, Jason in Friday the 13th.
Like in Deadpool, you got Ajax/Francis. Like, he doesn't really have a plan beyond just piss Deadpool off in the half part of the movie. And, like, yeah, he's got the weapon, the sort of, like, the program to, like... Isn't the Weapon X program? They don't really call it that, do they? Or,
I believe they don't call it that in terms of...
But that's not really his plan. I mean, in terms of the plot of the movie itself, his only role as antagonist is to personally just piss off Deadpool, and Deadpool goes after him. So, yes, he does other evil things, but in terms of the plot of that movie is trying to tell, he's focused purely on Deadpool. So, he's a evil assaulter, is what I say. Now, I said, some characters evolve into this. Like Voldemort in Harry Potter, he does want to take over the world, and he didn't really care about Harry until he got killed by the curse at the beginning that I forgot the name of. But
Avada Kedavra.
You have magic blood. You killed me. Anyway.
Yeah, because dead people talk very much. Anyway,
I'm also magic, so I'm back.
One example that I just came up with, and I hope you agree with me on where I'm putting him. I think this is the perfect place to consider the Joker.
Yes, exactly. Well, sometimes his plan is to, his plan also involves all of Gotham. But yes, he definitely does it mainly to piss Batman off. So.
Well, I mean that's the thing though, is that he does not care what he does to the world. It's his goal is to see how Batman reacts.
Right, he views it like a dance between the two of them. So.
He basically hones in on the one target, or anyone related to Batman.
Like, even if he does do anything to Gotham, it's often just to get a reaction out of Batman. Like, he doesn't really care about Gotham as a whole, whether good or bad. Like, he doesn't care if he destroys Gotham. It's not because he hates Gotham; it's because he hates Batman, or like wants to get a reaction out of Batman. So that's a good example. But yeah, I personally like the ones that, like, they start off as an evil overlord, but as the main character keeps thwarting them more and more and more, they become focused on this main character, right? So,
sure. Well, it's nice because there's a little bit of character progression in that sense, although you might argue it's regression because they're, trying to get rid of one thing as opposed to their original goal.
Well, they might still have their original goal, they just also have this one. They realize that in order to conquer their main goal of taking over the world, they have to focus on this other person first, because they know this main character is going to stop him if he does.
And this is why Rita Repulsa only ever attacks Angel Grove and the Power Rangers. Moving on.
Yes, that's a classic example. Almost as classic as the Joker.
Hardly a classic example.
It's almost as classic as the Joker. Almost. Not quite. But almost. Very close.
Hardly classic.
Remember that time that Heath Ledger was in talks to play Rita Repulsa? I don't know.
Yeah, right. Because Heath Ledger was totally around when they made a Power Rangers movie.
Yeah, he was. The one in 1995.
Yeah, but he wasn't in the show at the time, and they wouldn't have cast him to be a witch.
Okay.
Anyway.
Alright. Who knows? They cast him to be... Moving on!
Joke aborted.
Yeah. And Joker aborted. Ugh.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Okay. Anyways, next up on our list here, we got characters who, they're probably still evil. Or they might not be. At this point, it doesn't really matter. But they have good intentions. They just go too far trying to meet them, right? These are characters they're called the well-intentioned extremists, which is a term from TV tropes. These are like characters who want to do something good, like they say that, but the way they do it is evil, and the hero has to stop them. So their intentions are not evil. So, but they often go to evil measures to meet them. So, like, I think Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins is this. He's definitely an evil guy, but he claims to want to destroy Gotham because he wants to get rid of all the corruption
kind of a thing.
Yeah, like he thinks it's too far gone. No one can save it. These people aren't living lives. It's just got to be torn down, right? But he does it in a horrifying way, and also it's not going to work. And also that's too rational. Like, we as a whole, in terms of humanity, are pretty corrupt, and we're all killing each other like crazy. But I feel like if someone just wants to nuke all of us, that we're going to stop them. Let's be fair, I would probably be all for it. No, I don't know.
Gee, with how many times you talked about sending ICBMs and stuff. Anyway,
yeah.
There are other examples too. To use one that I was really close and near to my heart, I like the example of Alistair in Crack in Time.
Yeah, Ratchet and Clank,
the last Lombax. I mean, if you look at his backstory, it's really tragic.
Yeah. Right.
It's really tragic, and so he's trying to undo the mistake he did, and so he wants to use this device, the Great Clock, as like a time machine
to undo his mistake.
Spoiler alert, it's not the purpose of the Great Clock, but he thinks he can do this, and when it turns out that the Great Clock is for a completely different purpose, that Ratchet takes it upon himself to stop his fellow Lombax and, basically and basically if he wins, Ratchet is then basically alone in the world. There are no other Lombaxes to find.
Right. Well, the thing that makes him evil, you could say, he just doesn't know that the clock, but the reason why he's a well-intentioned extremist, he goes to every length to do this. Before this, he temporarily kills Ratchet trying to get this done. Yeah. And now Clank manages to bring him back only through, a quick temporal loop. But that's not to the scale that Azimuth is trying to do with, the 20-plus years of reversing back.
You'd have to go all the way back, and it would, totally...
Yeah.
We don't need to spoil the plot of one of the greatest Ratchet and Clank games ever. You should play it if you haven't, if you like that series.
Yeah, I guess. But, just basically the point is, he is still a well-intentioned extremist and not just a guy who's misunderstood because he killed Ratchet temporarily. And that's where the spoilers end. So
yeah. Well, and
anyways.
And to define well-intentioned, I'm watching a series, go figure, I come up with the Tokusatsu example right now.
That's okay, I understand.
One of the Sentai series was this series about angels who are defending Earth. It's their duty to defend Earth, and the main villain of that season is a former. The term is guardian angel. I would do the translation in Japanese, but it's not important right now. Anyway, the point is that he gets in his head that he needs to take it upon himself to renew the world, because as it is, it's going to hell in a handbasket.
Right.
And so he's the one who's going to, see it through a rebirth, but he's going clean slate.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could argue that he's a well-intentioned extremist, but, part of me wants to say that this particular character, kind of knows he isn't even well-intentioned. He's just completely an extremist. And so I was hesitating a little to bring up this example, but
it's still worth
but the idea of going to extremes is not unique to this character, this well-intentioned extremist. However, a well-intentioned extremist will get in your way if you have a different goal, and that's why they can be such good villains. In fact, I think they're kind of my favorite villains to write, because here's the thing. Yeah. You build up this character, and maybe you build in some sympathy for them. Maybe you build in a backstory that people want to get behind, and they want to root for him or her.
Right.
But because their goal is directly different from the protagonist's goal, they must be stopped. And so it puts a lot more personal investment for the reader into the story. Oh, excuse me, I say reader as if it were all books. Obviously, we're talking
I say
about
sometimes
Azimuth
films, it's all movies, so we're okay.
Right. But and to be fair, video games, but if we like the character and they have developed into this. It's kind of fascinating. I mean,
I do like it
one
too.
thing about the prequel trilogy, that view into Darth Vader's slow
Star Wars
conversion.
prequel trilogy is what he should specify. But yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mention Star Wars, but
I thought you didn't hear it. Go on.
No, I didn't. Thank you for adding
okay.
that. Anyway, but seeing some of the decision-making that went into him becoming Darth Vader is fascinating. Obviously, before those movies came out, if you didn't live under a rock, you knew that he was going to end up being Darth Vader. And so we always know the end point, but it's really, really interesting to see how they get there. Note, this does not always work.
Right.
There are sometimes when prequel trilogy, well, okay, if it's a trilogy, I suppose, but, prequels in that respect can be fascinating, but it's really nice to see characters who develop so well. Maybe it's not developing for the better, like becoming more good, but it is fascinating to see, and so that I really like writing this type of antagonist.
I do like that too. Now, here's to hoping that the Cruella de Vil prequel isn't a prequel trilogy. We got 98, 99, and 100 Dalmatians before we get to the 101 Dalmatians, I guess.
I suppose. Another example of a well-intentioned extremist, for those of you who are playing the major hit Injustice right now.
I was telling you, about Injustice 2 last time, I think. Or was it the time before? I don't remember.
I think it was last time. But, if you look at the Superman who has gone through all the stuff he's gone through in that universe, in that version, he is a well-intentioned extremist. He is very extreme, and his intentions are born out of the hero that he was.
Right. Like, he wants to, save the world. He wants to do good. He wants to stop crime.
Basically stop crime, right.
It's just like he goes too far by creating, a regime to try and stop crime before it happens. The way he's going to stop the bad guys is by making sure no one can ever become bad guys, in which case means becoming a dictator. So... Yeah,
and I think it's a good example of a well-intentioned extremist. The way they get there is usually wrong, and that's where the conflict comes in, right? Azimuth going so far as to kill Ratchet just to turn back the clock because, I can undo that too, just let me do it.
Right, we've spoiled that one enough.
Yeah. Well, I think we've done it a couple other times because we've talked about Crack of Time a lot.
That's the best one, in my opinion.
Oh, and it's certainly that entire set, the future games, the plot was really, really good.
I agree. Although I think the new one on the PS4 that I'm playing so much is pretty good too. You should play it. Oh wait, you can't. Ha ha ha. I'm sorry.
How about we move on to the next type of antagonist?
Oh, right. Speaking of what you're talking about, there's a character who you like rooting for, but then they end up opposing the hero. Our next one is the hero with opposing view. A good character, or an anti-hero, who only opposes the protagonist due to conflicting ideals or viewpoints. Now, an example is Iron Man, Captain America Civil War. I guess Batman, Superman kind of fall into this, except for that Lex Luthor is pulling all the strings. I mean, yes, there's someone pulling the strings in Captain America as well, in Civil War as well, but Batman v Superman is more prominent.
But unlike the audience, the character only knows what they know. They're not omniscient, and so they can't really see all of the strings being pulled. Right. If it's masterfully done, that they are just being manipulated. Sometimes you don't realize that, and so people are pitted against each other. You mentioned anti-hero, and I'm thinking that anti-heroes don't necessarily have opposing views, but their methods are certainly different.
It's kind of like a less extreme, well-intentioned extremist, I guess, than that post.
Well, they wouldn't be an extremist at that rate.
Well-intentioned, mildest. Nah, it doesn't work.
Doesn't work. But Wolverine, for example, and Cyclops go about, doing the hero business different ways. Wolverine is unafraid to get his hands dirty because he's so good at fighting and obviously the healing factor and whatnot. But, Cyclops would prefer to do it, most of the time, on the up and up and the straight and narrow kind of a thing as best you can. And, eventually they come into conflict over this multiple times. Right. And it's really fascinating with comics that, different creators have their own stamp on a character that, sometimes Wolverine is seen as the sympathetic one and Cyclops is the bad guy in their skirmishes, whereas the opposite has also been true. It depends on which way they're...
Yeah, the author, and also depends on which way the author likes each character. So, Frank Miller...
And the other thing of it, too, is if you have a situation where they do change and they grow over time, Marvel is particularly good at this. Instead of handing the title to another character, they usually, keep the same characters.
Right.
And so, like, Wolverine actually developed into a guy who was doing Cyclops' role better than Cyclops was.
Huh, nice.
Because of different changes in the story and whatnot. And so, this opposing view idea, it's never going to go away. Nobody is the same. You hope that there are different perspectives brought and hope that there are different expertises. And that's why I like the composition of the AE crew in our collaborative, but enough plugging that.
I do like this one as well. I think it's funny, like, to a lot of times in, like, political debates, you see, like, a lot of them saying, like, this guy is my good friend, but, we disagree on these certain things. Now, whether that's always true or not is the case. Like, I think someone was making fun of, I think, of that in, like, it was a Saturday Night Live one, I think, or, like, about the 2008 one. I think it was Joe Biden to about John McCain, where he kept saying, like, and this wasn't what they really said.
Would it have been Biden to McCain, or would it have been Biden to Palin?
No, it was Joe Biden talking about McCain.
Oh, talking about McCain. Okay,
but this wasn't really Joe Biden. This was an SNL thing parodying the whole thing. It was like Joe Biden was like, "I love this man, but he's insane." like this man's a great American hero who's like served us well, but we can't have him as president. No, like this is a man that I would take a bullet for, but he is insane. Stop him, please.
All right.
Like I think it's funny. I think it's
their political stuff is certainly amusing.
Anyways, enough about that.
But enough about SNL, because I don't like talking politics. But, sometimes you run into an antagonist that is not a physical character.
Yeah. I mean, they are some of them are kind of characters, but they're not like characters like the rest. Like, I'll get into that. But, like, we're talking about, like, nature and other neutral forces, like disasters and monstrous creatures. These are characters who aren't inherently good or bad, but just do what nature expects them to do in a way that opposes the heroes. So, like, a lot of times, like, creatures, like the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, which are characters, but they're not, like, the human characters,
Well, you can't really hear them talk.
Right. Well, like, the Indominus Rex, though, I don't think counts, because it is very much meant to be a villain. Like, it does malicious things. It's much more malicious intent. Like, it's clearly a dinosaur you're supposed to root against, not just a dinosaur that you're trying to escape from, Also, like in disaster movies, like the Twisters in Twister, the asteroids in Armageddon and Deep Impact, although I haven't seen Deep Impact, but I'd argue in Armageddon, though, the asteroid is treated like a character. And that, I don't know if you've ever seen Armageddon, but they personify it a lot. Like, they say, like, I don't think this thing likes us. That's because we're here to kill it. It has such an interesting sort of look to it. Like, when they actually land on it, it's like, has got a lot of weird spikes and crystals everywhere. And, like, there's, like, these gas vents that kind of make it all... One of the reasons why the nuke works at all when they drill into a nuke is because it's so geologically active. The nuke blowing up sets off a chain reaction to blow the rest of it up, because there's a lot of gas pockets and stuff. Now, and this makes it look, like, really gross looking. There's a lot of gas and stuff. A lot of times it, like, moans. So it's treated like a creature, almost, in a weird way, this asteroid, so...
Well, and, if you can personify things and make them more inherently villainous, because obviously, if an asteroid hits, a whole lot of people are going to get hurt, probably killed.
Well, in this one, it's like the size of Texas, and it has 18 days until it hits, which... Now, the size of Texas, that's like 1,000 miles. Keep in mind, the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs was 6 miles, so...
Sure, that means that we're in for, like, 3 times the destruction?
Try like 3 trillion times.
Sorry. You said the size of Texas, but I mixed it up with the 18 days. My fault.
Anyway. I see what you're saying. Okay. Yes. By the way, may I point out, like, I know the fun of the movie is not the science stuff, but if it's that big and that close, you could see it with the naked eye.
Yeah, you shouldn't have a problem picking it up. But
anyway, enough about Armageddon.
I would mention one more very interesting take, and this is me. I've been on a rant. Okay, maybe it wasn't a rant, but like, if I like so many people getting into suits and beating up giant monsters, why don't I like kaiju movies?
Right. Yeah.
But I think the kaiju definitely fit here.
Sometimes, like in Pacific Rim.
Generally, the kaiju fit here. Obviously, in Pacific Rim, they're the combatants, and so they're obviously the evil folks compared to.
Well, and also there's the people behind them, the make like the weird alien creatures that create the kaiju and send them over. Those are definitely the villains.
Right. But otherwise, they'd fight anyway. Look at all the movies that have pitted Godzilla against other Japanese monsters.
Some of them, are definitely villainous.
They would do that
some
regardless.
Of them, but yeah, I agree with you. Some of them are definitely just creatures just doing whatever, but yeah.
And I always find it hard to connect with villains that are, inherently unable to talk in your language. Which is part of the reason why I argue I don't like kaiju films, but, admittedly, I haven't seen many.
That's why sometimes they shoehorn in a villain to actually root against. Like Jurassic Park, you have Newman, or Dennis Nedry, I guess. Who's the one reason why the park starts going amok, because he turns off the fences, right?
Right.
And a lot of times in disaster movies, there's a character who always makes, like, the bad decisions, who ends up costing people lives, but they keep fighting the scientists. There's, like, there's this, funny sign at one of the marches for science that they've had recently here in America, which I'm sure you all know about, though. But the sign basically said, the start of every disaster movie is a scientist who's being ignored. I thought that was pretty funny.
I was about to make the joke, is that Carrie always' role in Twister?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's right. This is the character. Yeah, this is a character who you're supposed to root against because the Twister just isn't good enough, I guess. You can't actually root against a Twister. They're just a Twister. It's just nature. It's rooting against God or the weather patterns or what?
Mother Nature. Father Time. Might as well. No, I mean,
but they do that specifically to address the point you're making. Sometimes it's hard for people. So, yeah. Anyways. Okay, so our last one, though, this one's kind of abstract, but it's interesting. It's definitely certain kind of stories work better with this. It's no antagonist, in terms of there's no character antagonist and there's no nature antagonist. It's just the conflict of the story is purely character-driven. Like romantic comedies. The conflict isn't like there's a villain that they have to stop. It's more, will these two people get together?
Well, I guess it depends on how you define antagonist. Do you define antagonist as somebody who is actively working against the protagonist? Because
in that case, what would you call the antagonist in a romantic comedy?
I just call him a pain in the ass.
Yeah, that's right. See, I like romantic comedies. I grew up with 3 sisters and no brothers. You, who grew up with one older brother,
I appreciate a good story about romance that happens to be funny. So rom-com, I get that. But my point is this: that it may not be a huge, like, big bad, but there's always somebody who's like, you guys shouldn't be together.
Right. Well, I don't know. Let's see.
And depending
sometimes
on your
there is. Like the ex... Yeah, I don't know.
Depending on your definition of antagonist, that does qualify. But you're right. As far as, like, an evil supervillain bent on conquering Earth, yeah, not every story has that.
Right.
But how do you define... Because, like... It's kind of like all things must have some plot. It may not make sense, but
conflict. Every story needs conflict, but this conflict isn't from a character. It's from events. It's from events of from one particular character. It's from events about all the characters themselves. Like I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like Finding Dory is a good example. Sort of Finding Nemo, sort of, but not quite, because there's that dentist's daughter. That's more like just a race against the time plot device sort of thing than but the conflict in that is just Marlin trying to find Nemo. So there really isn't an antagonist there. Sort of, I guess, but it's more like just...
As I said, it depends on how you define antagonist. Is it the little person who gets in his way from finding Nemo, like delaying him further? Or is it somebody who says, I really don't want you to find Nemo, I'm going to destroy you?
Well, they do encounter jellyfish that don't talk. And they kind of get in the way, but they're not trying to actively stop them. They're just trying to escape. They have to escape from them, right?
So I suppose my argument here, and feel free to disagree, obviously, but I don't think there exists a story where there is no analog for an antagonist.
Well, yeah, because the conflict is some sort of antagonist, but
well, I don't know if the conflict itself exists as one, but there is something in the story that makes the protagonist's job that much harder. It may be a character, it may be a natural event, and I think that's what you're talking about.
Well,
a race against time kind of a thing.
Well, or just I don't know.
But I'd argue that there's no story
more examples,
without...
I think there's plenty of stories where there's not one thing you could particularly call an antagonist. It's just the conflict just comes from other things. I don't know. I'm really bad at this. I read all my stories and all the stories I watch and all the stories I play are all about, there's this epic fantasy world, but oh wait, someone wants to destroy it.
Well, I mean, cliches being what they are, that's where you find them in high fantasy and stuff. But,
right.
I mean, I just don't think that there is any form of a story where there is not an antagonist. Now, it may not be a very important person. It may not be a person at all, as I said, but there is something antagonizing. It might be based on the conflict. But I think that, you could always find some. You could always point the finger at.
Hold on, I'm gonna Google romantic comedies here. A list of them here.
We're so professional.
We're getting to the bottom of this.
We're so professional on the Ritwit.
All right, box office mojo, genre, scrolling down. Romantic comedy. Number 1, Big Fat Greek Wedding. You haven't seen this movie, have you?
I've seen Big Fat Greek Wedding. I just don't remember it.
Who's the antagonist in that? Oh, wait, you don't remember it. So the antagonist might be her family that keeps her from marrying a non-Greek person, but like less than halfway through the movie, they're for her.
Eventually, she does. I know.
Yeah,
but
so...
well, and again, with character development being what it is, I mean, I say that there's an analog for an antagonist in every story, which there should be, but I did not specify that it's always
a character,
an antagonist,
right? Yeah,
or even always a character. Like, it could very well be that it's one person at one time and someone else at a different time.
Okay, here's one. You've seen this movie, I haven't. 50 First Dates. It's down here on this list.
Huh?
I've
seen that movie and you haven't?
Yeah. Have you seen that movie?
Adam Sandler, Drew Barrymore, Amnesia. Yes.
I have not seen that movie. Who's the antagonist in that? Tell me.
Amnesia.
Okay, fine. That's not a character. But
right, it's not a character, but it is an antagonist.
Okay.
Because they keep having to do... The whole reason it's called 50 First Dates is because he
Yeah,
loves
no,
her
I
so
get
much
that. But I didn't realize you
willing
consider
to...
that the antagonist. I guess that's true. Okay, fine. Let's see. Who else is here? I don't know. None of these movies I've seen or you've seen or there's not really a lot for us two to talk about.
But I think that's the point, is I don't think that this truly is a very big deal. It's... well, okay, let me rephrase that. It's not very common to see a story that has no even minor antagonist, is my argument.
I don't know. I think we can stretch it a little bit.
As I said, feel free to disagree. Although, to throw it out there, we are talking about fiction, non-fiction. There might be things where there is no antagonist. It's simply a race against time. Like when a mother loses her child, expecting mother loses her child through a miscarriage.
Another time a mother loses her child, it's not because Hitler kidnapped them. So,
right,
who is a very non-fiction antagonist. Yeah, so.
There's no antagonist there. A miscarriage is a natural thing. It's very
well. If you're saying that Amnesia is the antagonist in 50 First Dates, the miscarriage is just itself could be the antagonist. Or
you're right.
Whatever happened in the body that made the miscarriage happen could be the antagonist.
Yes, as I said, it depends on how you define antagonist. But as I said, I call it an analog for an antagonist. I don't necessarily agree. I don't necessarily. I think we're character.
Okay. Well, at this point, we're getting to. Like we may be better than you listeners, but this is too much for me. I think this is too complicated. Let's move on.
What's wrong with being abstract? No, I do want to add one
linear. No, okay.
Fine. I do want to add one note separate from the no antagonist thing, and that is there's nothing wrong with having more than one antagonist. Mm-hmm. However, if you're going to write more than one antagonist, you should try and give them equal, at least development. Maybe not screen time, but development. So that they aren't just a throwaway character.
Right. I've always found multiple antagonists, though, a little bit... It's difficult. Like, there's a lot of superhero movies, Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 2, that ruin it. Like,
right. And when you have to balance all these things, it's really tough.
Especially if they're all antagonize one character for a different reason, then that makes the plot kind of muddled.
Absolutely. Let's see. Sorry, I'm going back to Sentai again. The 30th Sentai show was honoring the history of that had come before. And for those of you who are curious, it's called Go Go Sentai Bokenger, and they are using
you can
vehicles
spell that out for us. Not now, but you just give it to me later, and I'll edit it into the podcast description. Boukenger,
Bokenger. Anyway,
I was not writing that down, but okay.
It's on the recording. You can do it later. And they have at one time 4 different villain factions active at the same time. It is so crazy. It is so impossible to keep track. So all of these characters get short shrift. It basically turns into, oh, look, this person's taking his turn now. This person is taking her turn now. And it's not good for the story.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the kind of story. Like, I don't watch Game of Thrones, but it seems like that's how that is. There's all these different characters who are all morally ambiguous or morally just corrupt. And they're all just trying to get something.
Well, they're fighting against each other, I suppose. But, so... And it does depend on the type of story. It does depend on how good you are at writing them. But my point is this. If you're going to have more than one antagonist, don't go overboard.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with having more than one. In fact, it's probably better because that way there are distinct kinds of threats that are being presented to the antagonist, particularly in fantasy and stuff,
right?
Where that is really valuable to the story.
Well, yeah. I feel like though, if you have multiple antagonists or multiple antagonist factions, you should make sure, like, just to make sure not keep it too muddled, make sure one of them is shown as clearly the most important one. Like, the one the plot is trying to focus on the most. The other ones might be just more like world building, or like ones that the main evil faction hires temporarily. I don't know, so.
And this is why you only write one main big bad in your stories. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. Alright, well, moving on.
Okay,
so,
to be fair, okay, speaking from my experience in writing fan fiction, usually this is exhibited in how there's a leader and there are, like, generals in the same villain faction, you know? Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily mean multiple factions, but I do mean more than one character.
Right.
Because that way there's interaction to be mined, there are different methods to be explored, there are very valuable story things to take from. It's not just one person all the time the same way fighting the character in the same fashion. Yeah. Because that gets repetitive and boring.
Yeah, it's always nice to make it fresh. Yeah. So.
But if you have villains that, you know, play off each other and build just like the protagonists do, it's not only more fun to write, it's more fun to, you know, consume as a viewer, listener, reader, whatever.
Player, yeah.
Player, thank you. I
no problem.
don't know why I forgot that one.
Well,
that's my advice. Don't overload it, but you should not just rely on one true antagonist. And even right. Donald over there has not relied on one true antagonist.
Well, right,
like,
yeah.
They work together, but they are different characters, and that's what I'm definitely recommending.
Right, yeah. Well, I don't know. Well, just basically throughout all this, just find what works for you. Like, the final thoughts I have here is that just when writing a story, figure out which of these different types of antagonists works for your story. Like, any of them could work. Like, honestly, any story can have any of these types of villains, I think. Anyways.
I'd argue a romance comedy couldn't have an evil overlord.
Depends on the romantic comedy.
Is it a space opera? If it's on Earth, though.
Alright, new challenge for me. I'm going to write a romantic comedy with an evil overlord. Oh no, this elf needs to hook up with this hot female dwarf, but oh wait, the in-laws are coming in. Oh yeah, God. And also, there's an evil overlord that's going to do his dragon army to take over the world. He won't make it to dinner in time. Find out what'll happen on Elf. Don't elf it up. There we go. That's the name of it. That's the name of this romantic comedy I'm going to write with a overlord. Anyways, just basically find which one of these works for you. This whole point of this episode isn't talked about like how to write specific ones. Just to help you know what kind of villain you would want. Like, find which one intrigues you. Find which one fascinates you. Find which one you want to avoid. I don't know. Just think about it, listeners. Like, it's up to you.
Absolutely.
Like, we're just trying to help you.
I mean, if you want advice from us on how to write a certain kind of villain, please, by all means, go ahead and use the website or whichever means you're accessing.
You're doing that segue thing of like the.
And you should send us an email at the web address that you find there, and that is, for those of you who aren't looking at it right now, Matt.
You're trying to make this a natural segue. I refuse. I'm not going to make
Matthew Donald Creator.com.
I've got a specific finger I'm holding up here. I refuse to make a natural segue. It's got to be clashing.
What's wrong with a natural segue?
I don't like it. It's got to clash. It's got to come out of nowhere. How can people get a hold of us? It's called good planning. Shut up. No.
It's called good planning. You talked about not telling you how to write characters. We're not really telling you how to write characters, but if you'd like to get our advice on that exact thing, please send us an email.
Other questions you might have for us, this email.
Absolutely.
So email
if you have episode ideas, we'd love to have those because we've come up with all this content so far. But hey, we want to know what you guys want to hear about, and if there's something we can do, we'd love to make that happen.
And our listenership is growing daily or monthly, I guess technically.
Well, they do measure it in months, but it probably is growing by day.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get some emails now. I dread our first email.
Yeah, this show sucks. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, oh man, it's gonna happen. Or like, oh, by the way, I like Matt David better. Matt Donald can die in a fire, and I'd be like, oh, and you'd be like, yes.
I don't know if I'd say yes, but anyway. But yeah, any questions, comments, Rotten Tomatoes that you can't actually send through email?
If I don't miss postal service mail, you never know. You never know when you might get like a bomb or like just a bit of crap.
They do a pretty good job of screening that stuff in this day and age, I think. But anyway,
email us at mattd@matthewdonaldcreator.com. I'm not going to spell it out because it's going to be in the description on the podcast.
and we've already spelled it out on like 7
multiple times. We've always messed it up. I'm putting my foot down. No,
we don't need to do it anymore. Also, of course, if you're interested in following Matt Donald, you've got the official accounts and stuffs on social medias and whatnot.
Right.
So please go ahead and
Matthew
tell us
Don
more.
Creator for Facebook. Buy my book, by the way. I mean, I guess you don't have to. Do whatever you want. But my book, Megazoic, is on Amazon. And
if you go to the right library, you could check it out.
Oh, only at one library right now, so it doesn't really...
If you're at the right library.
Okay, fine. If you guys happen to be at the Highlands Ranch Library in Highlands Ranch, Colorado... It's there.
Deep in the
But
Rocky
if you're
Mountains.
not, sucks to suck, I guess. Or you could just spend your hard-earned money on it on Amazon, Kindle, and print. I'm doing a really great job selling this book, I must say.
They're selling like hotcakes.
Everyone is just lining up because of how nicely I'm asking them to support my art.
Death threats totally count as nice. Anyway,
I haven't sent any of them. Well, wait, no, I did, didn't I? Oh,
you sent that to me. I don't know about your listeners.
Anyway,
I
do that because I love you. You're special.
Oh, thanks. So special that he wants to kill me after every podcast. Anyway.
Yep. Anyways, all right. So you can also follow my Twitter at MatthewDonald64. Why 64? Because I gotta let you know the secret. I'm actually the 64th Matthew Donald clone in a line of Matthew Donald clones seeded throughout the world by our future alien overlords for unknown purposes. We've all do different things. I'm pretty certain Matthew Donald 63 is a crack smuggler. I don't know.
Good lord.
Good lord. Matthew Donald 65, I hear, is a fun party guy. Maybe he knows Matthew Donald 63. That's why he's such a fun party guy.
What does that have anything to do? I would think it would be 69 that would be...
Oh, I knew you were going to do that! I knew that!
Forgive our childish sense of humor, listeners. Anyway...
Let's just end this thing, and I'm going to kill myself.
No. See, now he's literally giving death threats to just about everybody.
I just want blood on my hands, whether it's yours or mine or the world's.
Well, okay, just to throw that out, if you send something over here like you talked about doing, how would you get blood on your hands?
It's metaphorical, dumbass.
Oh, okay, you weren't being literal. I figured because you were talking about yourself that it was. Anyways, listeners, that is more about types of antagonists. Obviously, we antagonize each other quite a lot, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
But please, if you've got feedback for us, questions, concerns, things that we can help you with, we'd love to. Contact us. We told you how to do that.
Until then,
I'm
Matt Donald.
And I'm Matt David. Us two twits who talk about ridding have just about twitted ourselves out. So
I don't feel better than you listeners anymore. I feel...
Really? Well, we may be a part-time barista and traveling, working abroad music major, but we are still better than you. So
you are still better than me, I think. I don't know why I'm so down, honestly.
I guess it depends on what you mean by better.
I am my own antagonist, is what I think.
Hey, anyway. That's a final throw-in. That is really good.
We're not continuing the episode. I'm not talking about antagonists that are yourself.
Personal antagonist. Look it up. It's a great thing. You should.
We'll do an episode of it later. But until then, peace out. Get out of here.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll talk with you next time on another episode of The Rit Wit, where us two twits talk about ridding.
Oh, another flawless episode.